James, what would you say would be a good example of a reference for a student to As you can
Okay, I do not a real teacher, by the way, that is obvious. We have some really young faculty members. That obviously give you kind of overview of what they did. There were a couple of other groups, they all did kind of TV kind of things. The one most memorable one, there's a show in the UK called the Jeremy Kyle Show, which is a bit like kind of Jerry Springer, you know, where you kind of have, hey, there's a real problem with referencing, and they're all which was interesting. Yeah, they were all like that. They're doing good. But anyway, interestingly, they all focused on referencing. So although I'd given the brief of information literacy, when they'd gone to get their information from whatever sources they'd chosen, referencing what wanted to come up. And also, quite interestingly, most of the videos had different information about referencing. And they picked that up. So when we had the premiere at the end, we had a quick kind of feedback, and that was what came back. Some people said, well, I thought you had to do it this way, and someone else thought you had to do it that way, blah, blah, blah. Which was interesting because then that generated a whole discussion about what we thought referencing was, and then we did a session about that. And that was quite interesting because during that session I did it a kind of standard, this is referencing kind of approach. But I didn't have any PowerPoint there, and the students created the PowerPoint at the end. So they had to listen, which was good. It seemed a bit sneaky. But they had to listen and take notes, and then they posted it up on our virtual learning environment, so, and we could check to make sure that we were all kind of had the same understanding then of what referencing was. So that was the end of that task. It wasn't assessed. It was made clear to them at the beginning that they those videos were then open on our website, on our virtual learning environment, for other people to access, for everyone to use. So we did do some revisions afterwards to make sure that the information was correct, because we wouldn't want people obviously taking those ones. Well, everyone said it was that, but then it wasn't. But what I did then was I gave, we had an evaluation following that premiere. We had a quick questionnaire that I got students to fill in, and then at the end of the year we did our reflection of the year, and I purposely put some questions in there to see if there was any ongoing relevance, any ongoing resonance with what had happened during those sessions. So that's what I'm just going to feed back to now. And I looked at them with regard to these the 7 principles that we went. It seemed to be a nice kind of neat way of analysing it. That's what we were hoping to do. So was there any evidence that then that's what we've done? And the kind of data I'm going to talk about now is a mix-up of stuff from the questionnaires and stuff from the end of the year. So I'll try and remember to kind of extrapolate that out a little bit, but that's basically where it's coming from. So the first point was about contact between the students and faculty. And the feedback that we had there was there were 46 students that were made up the group. And of those 46, 44 of them said that they had been in touch with people as part of that project. So not the sessions that they had to go to, but they had been in touch with one or more of either the people on my list that I gave them in the pack, or with other students or family members that they felt knew something about that. Obviously the problem with that is it was the first year, so I don't know whether my students the previous year had done that. But what was more refreshing in a way was obviously they had gone and accessed this information, but that they'd known what questions to ask. So when they'd gone to the student mentors, for example, and said, I need some information about this and I need it for this purpose, they felt more scholarly about it. It wasn't a kind of general, oh, I've kind of heard from someone there's this referencing thing-ish, I don't really know much about it. They had more of a purposeful attitude about it. And so I took that as positive. As I said, I haven't got the data from the previous year to compare it, but my gut feeling would be that my previous cohort, it wouldn't have been that number of students that would have made those contacts that early in the term. Reciprocity and cooperation between students, this was really interesting feedback. All of the students were able to say yes, that they'd been involved in some kind of teamwork. Some of them thought that was a good thing, and some of them thought that that was a bad thing. It was really, really interesting. It goes back to the point that I flagged up with them at the beginning of things that I can help them with and things that they need to help themselves with. So there were lots of really positive things about communicating and sharing ideas and having connections right from the very start and a focus right from the very start. But equally there was a lot of feedback about people that didn't do what they said they were going to do, and people that had said that they were able to do one thing and then they were absent, they didn't do the bits that they needed to, or people that were very dominant in groups and weren't very open to other ideas. So the reciprocity thing was quite interesting, because on one hand it was there, but on another hand there were obviously some really dominant characters there that made that more difficult in some areas. But when I gave the feedback to the students, that was what I said, you know, that's the situation you're going to find yourself in. Sorry.
Well, it's an important part of group work, isn't it? I mean, being able to deal with and recognise those contradictions, if you like. It's not all harmony.
That's well, in fact, one of the groups said that they were really glad that there was a dominant character there who really drove it through.
Right.
And the dynamic of that group meant that group of people needed or flourished like that.
Yes.
One of the other groups, there was a lot of disharmony about it because of the same situation.
So sort of recognising negatives as positives, isn't it? Which is an important issue.
And that was the kind of overwhelming motif that came out of the data was this. Yes, we did it. Yes, we did teamwork, and yes, teamwork is really hard. It kind of went both ways. Hi.
Did you give them any background on Tuckman's group model?
We did afterwards.
Okay.
Afterwards, we tried to look at, reflect on that group work process and match it up to some of those processes. Because as part of their ongoing evaluation, they do a placement through the year, and reflection is part of, and that builds into that module too. So, but we were really conscious of whether to do that beforehand or after, and I think we made the right decision to do it after, because I think they had stronger recollections then that they were able to apply more clearly to some of those roles. But some people might say it's a bit harsh, isn't it, to make them go through the nasty stuff and then say, well, you could have done this, but it's a good point. So I thought someone asked a question. Sorry. Shall I just press that light on there a second, because it's a bit, sorry, cinema. I don't know why they've got up at this.
That's obviously sitting too still. All right, okay.
The point there about active learning, on the questionnaire, I asked the students to list what skills they felt they had used. I didn't give them any template or any focus about that. And there were some really interesting ones that came back. So there were some practical skills like use of ICT and information about referencing, you know, using books and using libraries. That seemed to be a revelation to some of them, that there's a library and there are things in there. Quite scary. But there was also a lot of stuff in there about I felt independent. I felt that it gave me a chance to try something that I hadn't been able to do in school. In school I'd been in this box, and it gave me a chance to kind of come out of that box and be somebody new. Lots of things in there about people skills, communication, getting on with people in new situations. So they were able to recognise the academic-y bits of it, but also recognise some of the wider social stuff, which I was really pleased with. Prompt feedback, we asked a question there about was the time right? Now they all said, no they didn't all say actually, it was like 83% of students I think, said that they were shocked to get